Welcome back. You're listening to the Townhouses podcast, and today's episode is for the buyers. I sit down with Keagan from the lending team in Auckland, a group of mortgage advisors helping first home buyers, investors, and property developers alike navigate the world of funding and financing. It's an episode packed full of value, tips, and tricks. You're going to love it, so stay tuned, and we'll see you in the episode. It's great to have you here, Keagan. Thanks for coming along. We are going to chat about a few things today. We'll talk about the lending team in a second, but I thought we'd just get straight into some value and roles. Roles are super important, roles in business, roles in life. And for you guys specifically, as mortgage advisors, can you just kick off this episode talking about the role of a mortgage advisor?
It's funny that this is where we start because gone are the days of the traditional mortgage brokers. Like back in the day, sort of the way the public sort of saw our service was we basically find where the deal has to go. It's when you want to buy a house, you come to us, put the application where you're going to get, quote, the best deal, and that's where it ends. Not anymore. So now the whole industry has gone through a major shapeshift, and now we're all registered as financial advisors, specializing with us, mortgage advisors. So now our role is more so beyond who has the best deal. It's supporting them even years before they're ready to buy. Where are they? What do we need to consider? What are their options? What are their hiccups? Preparing now, reviewing 6 months' time, whatever. Then actually through the process, you're not just looking at rates and who's going to get you the best deal. It's actually which structure suits. What's your life plan? Not full life plan, but sort of in the next few years, what do we need to consider? Are you a business owner? How's that going to impact your mortgage? Like it's well beyond just the rate and the cash.
Sure.
And I think that's been very interesting, especially coming into this, seeing how sometimes people think we do the deal and then they're never going to hear from us again.
Right.
Where with us, it's that long-term relationship. It's before the application, during, and then after, because life changes. So yes, you might buy your first home at 25, but who you are in your family situation at 35 is going to be completely different.
Yeah. And I love that. And even 50 and all the time, to go. Yeah. You've mentioned heaps of value in there already, and I've got lots of questions. But essentially to sort of put that into context, mortgage advisors aren't just someone you go to sort of tick some boxes and maybe get like yes or no approval. You're not parents, you're actually advisors. And so first question is around the whole change to financial advisors. Like, did that come because there were a lot of issues surfacing in the market, like in legal ways, because you're now deemed financial advisors, or was it just to give more support or to give you guys more credibility?
It's a bit interesting. I think it was a few things. Essentially the demand was there. Kiwis wanted specialized advice to go, I want help, I want to get control over my finances, I want to have a plan, and I need someone with experience to guide me because I've never had a mortgage before. I know the essence of what I'm supposed to do, which is pay it off, but how I do that in the best way for me possible, I need that specialized advice. And the traditional mortgage broker wasn't necessarily that fit. Also, from a regulation standpoint, the market wanted to have some consistency. So now you have to have a level 5 qualification and then register on the FSPR. And you have to then also, as a financial advisory business or financial advice provider, all the jargon, you have to have set standards that you follow. So from a regulation standpoint, they wanted to have consistency so that clients had a level of expectation of what they were supposed to experience, but also Kiwis just wanted that next level service, and they weren't necessarily getting it from just based on their practice. They weren't necessarily going to get it from the lawyer because they've got their role. The accountants have their role, and the banks, again, are from internal, and they've only got their policy, so it doesn't suit their.
Nice. I mean, it sounds pretty win-win, keeping advisors sharp and then keeping customers safe.
Plenty of compliance obligations now.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's awesome. So lots of changes, I guess, to your role, and that's kind of defining the role that people can expect. Like if they're a homeowner looking to buy their next or to refinance, I'd assume, or if they're a first home buyer, coming to you guys is more than just either them doing their work themselves, like you guys do that for them, but it's not just ANZ's the best to go with or Westpac or whoever. It's actually, I need help around identifying my property goals, like whether they want to become an investor or they just want to have a family home or their first home. and you guys get to support in that. Change in your role kind of leads to our next topic, which is trends. And trends are, by definition, things that go up, go down, and specifically in property and finance, go round and round. So there are like 7-10 year cycles in both property and other areas of life. But what are some of the current trends that we're seeing in either mortgage and what you're facing with your customers, but also like in the wider market?
I literally had to write down little bullet points of this because there's so much happening. And I think ultimately the one word that I could use to describe current trends is uncertainty. So not probably what you wanted to hear, but we're in January, 1 of February. What month are we in?
Time is flying. We're in
Feb?
mid-Feb.
Mid-Feb. Well, I'm in my head still beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So from our standpoint, it's new government, new year. We don't quite know where the year's going to track. And from that, we've got the OCR announcement, 28th of Feb, and you had people at the end of last year sort of putting org, on red saying, we're going to see a decrease. Then you had one of the major banks in New Zealand coming out recently saying we're looking at 2 potential increases in their opinion. So buyers are going, I'm confused.
Trust, where do we
what's going on? But the reality is nobody knows. And that's why that specialized financial advice around a balanced conversation about if this happens, scenario A, if scenario B happens, or C, D, or whatever else, what's our plan?
Yeah.
And how does it potentially impact us? So people who are waiting for rates to just suddenly go back to 3%, if that's what you're relying on, please get financial advice, because we've seen people in their experiences when they haven't planned ahead. For instance, when they were coming off, those 3% rates, coming on to 6, 7, and they waited and waited and waited a month before. It's really hard to change your whole lifestyle potentially a month before that refix date, whereas 6 months before probably was the better time to have a conversation.
So more time, like in anything, preparation is key. We'll talk about interest rates specifically soon, but do you think, just to pause on that for a moment, what do you think, and you guys work with a lot of customers, what do you think's the rational thinking that people always want to wait? Like whether it's 3, it's 5, it's 2.9.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's 3.1 and they're going, I want to wait till 3.
Yeah.
What do you think sort of traps people on that?
I think people don't want to not get a good deal. Buying a house is, as it should be, a very serious decision. It's not one to be taken lightly. You need to have a real conversation about, are you committed to the terms of taking your mortgage over the next 30 years potentially, and what that means for you and your family. So when they're also in Auckland, you're looking at buying a house, the average property price is about $1 million. The idea of that, especially as a first home buyer, is really daunting. And that commitment is really scary.
For sure.
So I think because they're worried, am I going to get a good rate? Am I going to be better off if I wait? Am I going to be able to buy a better house if I wait? Am I going to potentially save enough if I wait for something else? They're always comparing what if. What if the market crashes? What if rates go down? What if?
And they're probably just they're actually probably asking themselves, do I actually want to do this? And they're kind of staging it with questions about interest rates. It's like, it might not really be about interest rates. This might be deeper. It might be like, do I really want to take this on?
And not only with first home buyers, but people who are at the moment we're seeing looking to sell existing, and whether or not it's because of current things happening in their family, they need to relocate, whatever, and they need to buy. Those tough conversations when you sit across from, your partner, and you actually talk about what's the plan, what's the budget, etc., expectations, we're actually finding those conversations prove to be very tough for people because it all comes to a head. Everything you're worried about, the what ifs, all come to fruition. And I think that's why people wait, because actually having those tough conversations, nobody really likes to talk about money. It's daunting. But I think buyers who know what they want, I committed to buying and preparing appropriately, those are the buyers that are still buying regardless of all the noise in the market. And we're seeing them doing it quite successfully, which is exciting.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, to wrap it up, trends in terms of what's happening right now is that, well, the trends are pretty uncertain. It's like the definition of trends that go up and down, and we're probably in that market of some people saying up, some people saying down, some people saying it's going round. But at the end of the day, like engaging with advisors like yourself, professionals or other teams across the nation, it's about getting a plan together, identifying goals. So that's with everything, like in life, business, and in the home buying journey. You need to know what your goal is. And if your goal is to build an investment portfolio, or your goal is to buy, to end up in a family home, but maybe it means starting in a townhouse or a starter apartment or a home, then having someone to clarify the goal and help you like ratify a strategy, it just sounds like that's key.
Also, last thing to add on that is you can only control what you can control. And so when things do change in the market, rules, regulations, that's why you need the advisor there. Because as things change, all we can do is adapt. And so you want to take back that control. You can't control what rate's doing. You can't control what, everything else is happening in the market, right? But you can control what you actually do, preparing for your application and how you choose to respond to that. So, not ignore the noise, but try not to get lost in it. Yeah,
focus on what you can focus on and actually control. That's awesome. Now, the next question could be around opportunities. I think a lot of people like to, we could talk about opportunities all day long. Where to get free money from the government, from friends and fam. We could talk about all of the lighthearted stuff, the fun things. But I think what is greater than opportunities, and I wanted to really, make this a center point of this conversation, is that what's better than an opportunity is actually challenges, because challenges, I think, produce two things. They produce opportunity, and then they also, even greater, they produce people who are able to spot and seize opportunities. And so instead of talking about opportunities, which we can talk a little bit later, what are some common challenges right now that home buyers are facing? And this is both for listeners who are home buyers or for developers who just need to get a better finger on the pulse of who they're selling to.
Right.
That's a whole other topic for another day. But today, the common challenges for home buyers that you're seeing, what are some of them?
So the biggest challenge when you actually apply for your mortgage is you are being tested at about 9%. So regardless, you can see online the rates are currently 6 point something, 7 point something, depending on your deposit. You're being tested at 9. Can you afford your repayments at 9%? So from an affordability standpoint, which is, quote, how much the bank is willing to let you borrow, that is reduced. A few years ago, it was at around 5%. Almost double that now. So people are experiencing that they can't buy for, quote, what they wanted to. So that's a challenge. Also, first home buyers, a lot of them in the market now that are taking the opportunity to get in, is those first home buyers utilizing a less than 20% deposit. With that, they're limited by their deposit. So for instance, say if you can get in T's and C's with 10%, if your deposit is $70,000, $700 purchase price is your max. Regardless of if you earn $300,000, at 10% deposit, 20, that's where you're capped to. So for those first home buyers, they get frustrated because they can qualify for a bigger mortgage, but their deposit is limiting them to, say, that 70, 80 by that. So,
and sometimes it's the other way around, right? People have got the deposit, whether it's because they're an absolute weapon of a saver and they're the ones selling, Fijos since they're 11 on the side of the street, and they've got that nest egg, or they've got a supportive family unit, or they've just got access to funds. Especially like even for my wife and I, when we bought our first home, the grants and everything, the opportunities that were out there helped us a lot. But some people get stuck in servicing, and that's kind of the other side of the spectrum, isn't it?
And that's when you've got those high income earners that, high income earners have the deposit issue. Sometimes they don't necessarily have that 20% golden ticket, but then you've got people who, single household, for instance, single income, and they've got a good deposit, but it's just at 9% test rate. It's tough. At the moment, like, let's say if you wanted to borrow $1 million, back in the day, a few years ago, $1 million mortgage was not average, but it wasn't unheard of. Now, to qualify for $1 million mortgage, you're looking at a joint income of $200,000. it does depend on the situation. If you've got more kids, debt, etc., that's going to go up even.
Where you live, like access to higher salary, like that's a massive thing as well, right?
Yeah, so it's actually $1 million mortgage is not easy nowadays.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it ever has been easy or ever will be. I know my mum's first home, I think, was $101,000. 3-bedroom, Pico Street, number 1 Pico Street in Nelson. Can't stalk us because we don't live there anymore. But that was, and even then, that was not like she just walked into the bank happy as Larry and just accessed a mortgage. Like, it's always been tough.
Yeah.
But I think, like we've talked about, challenges can produce opportunity to access that. But also, if customers that you're working with or people listening to this podcast are willing to achieve that goal, then they just need to lean into challenge, really, and just get the right team, find a strategy. And then the third part, which is really tricky, sticking to it and just like going for it for as long as they need to.
That discipline.
Yeah. Now we get to the good part, which is the lending team itself. And we can just talk a little bit about what you guys actually do. We've heard about the roles, the context and of a mortgage advisor, in general in the industry. But for you guys, like, do you want to just talk real briefly about your services and just ways that you help and support your customers?
What we do. So the lending team is myself and my dad, so family business. It's just us duo. And for us, it's our family values really underpin how we run our business. It's not only what we do, but it's who we are. And I think from our standpoint, we really strive for that personalized, genuine client experience. Our clients are not an application number. When you email, you're not getting transferred to somebody else. There's no 0800 number. Neville or myself who's answering the phone or the email. That's it. And so for us, we want clients to reach out early. So if you want to buy a house, you don't know if it's going to be 6 months or 2 years, reach out and have a conversation, because we want to get in there early so that you can have habits now that actually are aligning with your goals. Because when you start the process, you don't know. It's a big journey to undertake, and that's where we do come in as that expert advice. Neville, who is my dad and who I work with, has been in the finance industry.
You got it. It's good.
For 30 years. And so in 30 years, there's not much you haven't seen. And so when you've got access to that knowledge, while also having, that personalized family valued experience, it's a lot less daunting. And I think that's why customers really enjoy working with us, because yes, they've got the knowledge, and yes, they've got, all of their options on the table and all the jargon sort of taken out of it. But they also have that support, and they don't necessarily feel like it's stale and there's, judgment or anything. And also for us, it's because of our family story. Our specialty is in assisting, your self-employed business owners. Neville loves those applications, good to them all day long. And also supporting our New Zealand resident community, because we immigrated from South Africa, so we know that unique journey. And so being able to support them through that journey in New Zealand, which is a very different market, it's really rewarding. So that's what we do.
Oh, that's awesome. And there's flavours for all sorts of people. I think that's why there are multiple companies in the mortgage industry. Everyone's going to have their unique specialty. And I think the uniqueness from you guys is, one, migrating to New Zealand and going on that. I've got a lot of South African friends. It is not like it's a walk in the park. And the ones that are here and can stay are absolutely thankful for that journey. So specifically, if people are migrating, you guys would be great to reach out to. The other thing is, like you touched on, which is really important for, I think, home buyers to know, and just developers to be aware of if they're wanting to create content or support, their sales people supporting their leads, is that a lot of home buyers find it unfair. I know that I felt it a little bit, and my wife felt it unfair when you've got one of those components we talked about, like the deposit or the servicing, or maybe you've actually got both, but there's the hidden third sort of bump in the road that can occur, is that you've got deposit, you've got great servicing or adequate servicing, and then that third little bump comes in, which is clean bank records, good financial behaviour, that the bank is now pretty much doing a character assessment on you. And you mentioned whether you want to buy property next week, 6 months or 2 years. The key is to talk to someone. And I'm not a financial advisor, disclaimer, but I tell all of my friends and everyone that I meet, just start today. Talk to somebody. So in that, do you think people just hesitate because even talking to you guys can be difficult? And what are some of the things you would encourage like someone right now to just pick up the phone, whether it's with you guys all over socials or it's with somebody else? What can we tell them?
I think something we hear a lot is people think that their situation is either complicated or not there yet. And if that's what's stopping you from reaching out, please reach out. The number of times we have people, sort of take the leap and email, get in touch, and they say, I know I'm not there yet, or my situation's really complicated, and then we look at it and we go, normal application.
Yeah.
It can be really hard, but that first step to reach out, until you take the leap, step one is the hardest, which is actually reaching out. You won't actually know where you stand. And I think to sort of offset that fear, just think about what you have to gain. You get to gain clarity. Actually, where am I sitting? Is the thing I'm worried about actually something I need to be worried about?
Yeah.
Is that thing I heard about in the news actually going to impact me? Or my goal of a $50,000 deposit, is that reasonable for my goals? Until you actually get that financial advice, you won't know. I think that clarity is really freeing. Also realize that this is what we do every day. So people sometimes get worried about, even us looking at their bank statements. For us, it's just numbers. And I think something to remember is we are a professional service, and this is a passion of ours. So we want to help, we want to support. So judgment-free zone. We'll be straight up if there's issues in your application or things like that, but we do it with empathy.
And at least, like we talked about this before the podcast even started, is just to know the truth will give you that clarity. And sometimes it's a wake-up call. We actually all need, we all need to wake up, whether it's in the morning or just to wake up to the reality that there may be things you have to address. But it's far better. It is challenging, but it is far better to know where you are, where you want to go, and how to bridge that gap. And sometimes, and pretty much all the time, the truth is what bridges that. And to not be offensive to our listeners, it is to say, you're not that special. You're a special person, and you can get that. You can get that from home, but you're not that special in this fact that there are others like you with similar complicated, quote unquote, situations, difficulties, whether it's servicing deposit behavior, whatever it is, or even just you don't know what your goals are. And to tell you that you're not special is to encourage you that there is help available. People can support you, and you guys can, if people need help, they can find the lending team online. And I like that because one of the hardest things people find is taking action, because they have to take the first step. But what I've noticed from you guys is that you are leading and almost trying to take the first step for them by creating a whole lot of content, and trying to get to them first to sort of encourage them to get out there, which I would recommend property developers can do the same. Like they can either partner with you, like what we're doing in this episode, or they can create their own internal content to just get to the buyer first and just tell them, hey, I know it's scary, we'll take the first step. How about you just respond and we can go somewhere.
That's a really important point because there is so much fear on taking that first step. I found that if somebody feels like they already know you, or they kind of know where you stand on things, they know your personality, for instance with us, Neville trains a lot, or he's really into fitness. I like going to the gym. You sometimes have a commonality, and having that, sometimes when people pick up the phone and they call a number they don't know who they're going to speak to, it's really daunting. So they don't know who's going to be on the other side. So if you can already take that element of who is it I'm going to speak to out of the way, I think it encourages people to feel more comfortable with you, and also more open to what you have to say. So if you're a property developer and you do post content about your builds, or even behind the company, a little bit of behind the scenes, people are going to be interested in that. I think. So.
Oh, for sure. I think it's like the same reason I hate shopping online. Is I'm like a walk into the shop kind of guy, try the shoes on, try the jeans, the top, and actually just like have that experience. Because for me, that's less daunting to actually go in, but people don't always have that luxury. And so for you guys, you're reaching out with social, you're almost like creating a in-store experience in the digital world for people to just like watch content. And I just think it's great. moving forward though, tips and tricks. Let's get into some of the good stuff. Tips for navigating the mortgage process is what I've got next on the list. And it's just to give people not only, we've just given them some encouragement and a little bit of the hard truth, but how do buyers take steps from now, whether they are a first home buyer or they're an investor. I know that investors are smart people. They don't end up with a portfolio by accident, but because times are changing so fast, there may also be investors out there wondering, are there more creative ways to approach what I'm doing? But what are some tips and tricks to just get people, like we've been talking about, to take that first step of just getting started?
You touched on it earlier. The way you manage your money does matter. So if you are saving every month, you're not going over your credit card limits, you're not going into overdraft, you're paying your bills on time, that is what the bank is looking for when they assess your application. If you are going into overdraft, for instance, your gym membership comes out on a Tuesday, but you're paid on a Wednesday, and every week you're paying that late, the bank are going to say, why didn't you just change the payment date? It's all about that signaling of financial responsibility. Because again, mortgage, big responsibility. So that's something that people get caught up on. So the bank look at your last 3 months of account conduct, so 3 months of before the application, and sometimes even up to 6. So that's something to consider.
What changes that? Is that the bank's just like the side of the bed they woke up on that day, or is it if you've, for example, you've got a low deposit and maybe a hairline salary? Does that determine it, or is it determine the type of property? Or
9 times out of 10, they just request 3.
Okay,
but sometimes, just based on maybe the risk standpoint of the application, the assessor who's looking at it, they might just want that extra confidence to look at the last 6 months. But again, 9 times out of 10, it's 3. But again, if you're thinking of buying a house in a year's time, think about your habits now.
You might as well start now. No, there's no point worrying about 3 months if you've just got 12 months. You're backed up, you're ready to go. Again, a common thread that comes through in this is that sometimes it's not the outcome that people should focus on. Like the process is something that's really important, because the process of becoming more financial literate and responsible, you just become better. Like you'll become a homeowner and a greater person, which is like 2 really good outcomes. What else is there that they can sort of tips? So getting started early. Obviously getting in touch with a professional or professionals. Building an A team.
Also, it's with reaching out early to an advisor. It's about building that relationship and trust. So, for instance, when you go through, especially as a first home buyer, or even if you've already bought a property and you've got a refix coming up, and what was happening is people were going from that 3-4% to 6 or 7. They want to feel like they can trust the person who's actually giving them the advice. The consequences of improper advice, to a client, it's really daunting, for that client from their perspective, if that were to happen to a client, right? So for them, they want to know, tell me what you think. Why do you think that? Let's talk about it. Let's build the relationship so that I can actually feel confident and go, does this make sense to me? Does it not? Let's talk about it. Do I need to talk to somebody else? You give yourself that time to actually build that relationship, because that refix date will come around very quickly and things can move very fast, especially if you're looking to refinance, restructure, etc. So that's why that reaching out early is not just the information aspect, but it's that relationship as well, and building that trust as well.
Awesome. Get in early, start now, build a relationship with the right people, build that A team, because it's not just mortgage advisors, it's your lawyer, it's a great real estate agent or accountant, especially for our self-employed folk, or people who are obviously high achievers and have wealth or whatever. Get the right people around you. And I think the unsung hero is also getting around success, and what that looks like if you're first home buyers. Get around friends who have bought, even if they were in the last cycle and you've got that cynical sort of like, they had it easy. It's like, just choose to think no one's had it easy, everyone's got it tough, but there are some that made it through. That's one of my encouragements too, is like, get around people who've actually just bought property. And if they've got horror stories, it's probably good, because then at least you can hear worst case and you can try and slot your way into best case scenario.
Of course.
And there are great places, like so many Facebook groups. There's so many Facebook groups that it can be kind of hectic, but have so many stories of people, posting success stories, and you just want to have that in your world, understanding People can do it.
And know that everyone is going to have an opinion. So you've got your relationships with people in your life. They're going to have an opinion. They're going to tell you about this and that. You're going to hear things in the media and the noise. Take it with a grain of salt. Like, listen, but know that do not take an assumption for yourself based on what somebody else's experience is.
Yeah.
There is so much that goes into why somebody's application went one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I think on the surface, it's oversimplified. So yes, because you earn the same and you're the same age, you're not going to necessarily get to borrow the same.
Yeah.
There's a lot more of a story behind everyone. Yeah. So take it with a grain of salt that, and even I think something that happens is, especially as a first home buyer, you compare your journey to somebody else's.
Yeah.
They bought for 1.2 and I can only buy for 800. You don't know their financial position. You know, a lot of people aren't fully open with how they get to where they are. You don't know if there was a gift involved. You don't know if they saved since they were 10 years old, or even if there was an inheritance in there. You know, that sometimes happens, and people aren't going to be always upfront with that. So never compare your journey to somebody else's, and it doesn't take away from yours either. It's still an achievement. Like, getting into your first home is a dream.
That's outstanding.
So it doesn't matter what they're doing. Focus on your journey.
We're almost going to contradict ourselves, but we've told people, if you're listening to this, you're not special in the sense that there are people out there going through similar things and are getting help, so go find that help. But the other side is that you are special in the sense that your situation is very different to even the person you think is a twin. It's everyone is case by case, but working with an advisor means you've got someone actually not holding your hand, really, actually just leading the way for you. And inviting you into home ownership, really, is that we had an advisor that changed the game for us, and we just, I tell everyone, and this is actually what I should ask you now. Last quick question on tips is, where should people start, as in who do they call first? It's like a age-old conversation. Like, do I walk into an open home?
No.
Do I talk to a real estate agent? Do I go on Townhouses.nz, humble plug, or do I talk to an advisor? Or, here's another one that people, actually, a lot of people do this, go straight to the bank. So where should people start and why?
In my personal opinion, it should be the advisor. Because walking into an open home, not having a good idea of actually where your budget stands is a recipe for disaster, because you'll set your expectations probably in the improper place. You don't want, the times people have sent us through like signed sale and purchase agreements, and we do the numbers and we go, the mortgage repayments are more than you earn.
Wow.
It's a really hard conversation to have with someone, because their expectations, they've already imagined their life in this home, etc. It's a really hard place to start. You know, that conversation is already
They're coming to you like, don't worry, I'll make it work. I'm cutting lawns, I'm selling fruit. Like, I've got this brand new side hustle, but really they need to know where they are first.
And it's gathering that team. So it would be us from the finance standpoint. Where are you looking at? Especially if you're self-employed as well. There's sometimes homework to be done first.
Which would be like working with your accountant, right?
Yeah. So gathering the information, especially like where we are now, we are approaching, end of financial year soon. So the conversation about the financials, what do last year's look like? What do, if we apply now versus if we wait? All of those kind of conversations around that, which is a time conversation, so reach out early. Also, get your financial statements done early. Sometimes that we're waiting for the accountant, and it's no fault of them. They didn't know that there was a deadline, which was a house.
Yeah, their customers just already signing.
Exactly. So that's the standpoint there. Also, reach out to your solicitors. Get that relationship. Also, if you're in a de facto relationship, we do need to at least address the conversation of, are you going to be looking at getting an agreement in place? Have you guys spoken about that? And that's, again, having those tough conversations with the lawyer early, before we found the dream house, so that we can talk about that if that's something you guys want or don't. But that's also something that takes time. And then it's the real estate agent coming in to support looking at properties. Remember, the listing agent is working for the seller, not for you. So those three, and then the accountant comes into play for those self-employed clients too. So maybe a bit
bonus trick, just in the if you are looking at townhouses, a great wee trick if you're a home buyer is once you've done all the right things, you've got your financial advisor, you've maybe done homework and you've got your account settled, you're being a very perfect financial citizen and you're following all the trends, you're ripe and ready. If you find a townhouse, a quick hack is to go, and the developers will love this, go straight to the developer and just see if they've got an internal sales team. Sometimes it's nice to like work directly with the people who are selling it, and sometimes they'll just refer you straight to an agent.
Right.
But every now and then, a developer can give you a unique experience because it's the stock that they build and own.
Right.
And they can get sort of insights from there. So it won't work every single time, and there are amazing agents out there. But every now and then, just knock on the developer's door and see if they're willing to work with you firsthand. They've also got supply and access to the rest of their stock, so they might have something that's better fitted for you if you're looking at that. There's a couple more questions, and I reckon we'll just race through these because we've already dumped a lot of value into this episode. Very quickly, impact of interest rates. Now, we talked about the whole waiting game and waiting for the perfect number, which is a myth, and you should just get started now. But the impact of interest rates on repayments for homeowners can be quite drastic. Sometimes 0.5% or a whole percent can actually really impact people. We talked about rolling off old rates onto new rates that are higher. What are some of the impacts that can happen if you're on like an existing 3% and you've just rolled over to a 6.5 or a 7? What are some of the maybe not so obvious impacts?
So when we were seeing, people rolling off those 3-4% and going on to those higher interest rates of 6-7, like from our clients, just from our experiences, we were seeing clients' repayments go up by like $1,000 a week.
Wow.
Sometimes. Depends how much your mortgage is, etc. But they were going up. I did make actually the numbers rather than jargoning it because it can get finicky. But you were at 4% for $1 million, you're looking at about, $1,100 a week. That was jumping up to $1,500.
Yeah.
So $400 a week or $1,600 a month. That's correct method.
Yeah.
So that's just on a higher level. For a family, where's that extra money coming from?
Totally.
So it does depend on, if you're already, the people who are buying at, the peak of 2021, and they were already pushing it with servicing, they were buying at their max. They were being tested at around, 5-6%. Rates are higher than that now.
Yeah.
So those were the people that really hurt if, they had their full mortgage at 3 and had to refix the whole thing at sort of 6-7. So I think the lesson that we learned from sort of the last few years is having a balanced conversation around the structure with your interest rates.
Yeah.
Understanding the risks and the different products available from, the banks and how can we actually utilize them for the best of our benefit, and having a detailed conversation and not overlooking it. So yes, interest rates have had a undeniably huge effect, an impact, but the question if you're buying a home is how much are you willing to spend on a mortgage each week?
Yeah.
That's your budget. If the bank can tell you can borrow X and the repayments are higher, it doesn't matter that you can buy for more, because for you've just told us you can't afford the repayments based on your comfort level. So buy it, the repayments aligning with that, not what you can borrow. And then if you are refixing, reach out early, and it's a balanced conversation around structure and how we navigate if this situation happens, rates going up, rates reducing. So you have that full holistic conversation.
Awesome. I mean, I think it's, for me, I keep liking it to shopping, so we'll just continue there. It's making your decisions before you enter the store.
Yeah.
It's like knowing your exact goals. Like my goal today, and Kmart just destroys this for most New Zealanders. It's like, I just need like a, one of those squeegee wipers for the shower. That's all I need. And you leave with everything but that, and you come out. Yeah. It can be really similar, I imagine, for people when they're in that pressured moment, especially if they don't have the help. Yeah. If they're rocking into the bank on their own and they just hear, you can actually, loan this, people go, great news. I'm gonna go. And I went in looking for 70% of my lending limit, but now I'm just gonna go 100. And so people need to avoid that and just know where they stand, and then have the team that can keep them accountable to their goals. Really.
Yeah. Try stick to budget. But even sometimes, we see the sale and purchase come through and we're like, cool, we're going there.
You didn't listen, yeah. So listen,
we help either way.
Get expert advice and listen to it. And yeah, I mean, the future of the mortgage market, now we don't have a crystal ball here today. And even if we did, they don't actually work. We touched on this with trends in the sense that the trend right now is uncertain.
Yeah.
Or maybe not uncertain, it's just like you just can't read what the exact trend is. But just the future of mortgage real quickly, like what are you sort of seeing? Are there big changes approaching?
In our opinion, 2024 is going to be pretty similar to 2023. If you're looking for, quote, a miracle to happen with rates or prices to crash or whatever, personally, I don't foresee it. I think it's going to be pretty similar to 2023. Rates, I think, are going to be pretty similar. We might see a slight reduction, yay, but it's not going to be down to 4%, 3%.
Yeah.
So, in our opinion, I think mortgage advisors are going to be even more crucial to the process, regardless if you're a first-home buyer or an existing owner, because, again, from learning from what's happened and going, nobody saw that coming, that's, I think, why that specialised advice, balanced conversation structure, reviewing, where am I in my life now? What's the goal? Reassess. Where am I in my life now? Reassess.
Totally.
I think it's going to become more important, especially with the changes in our industry and regulations as a whole. I think that will happen. But I think those are the two big things where it's going to be pretty similar, I think.
I think 2023, we saw some stuff. And 2024 is we now have the opportunity to respond and actually, not react, but make a balanced plan like we talked about and head towards those goals, because we just want, and it's part of this podcast, people to be equipped to achieve goals. There's no point in having knowledge without using it. And so we're keen for people to work with people like yourself, listen to these episodes, get all that they can, but then just get started and start making a plan, start taking action.
Moving forward.
Just moving forward, yeah.
Like regardless of what is going on, we adapt, like you said. We move forward. We can't predict, or we can't always have a crystal ball, if only it makes so much money if we had one. But all we can control is what we can control. We adapt, we've got goals, and just go for it. For us, we say your first home isn't impossible. Yes, we might need to sort of change what we think a first home looks like or on path, and it might take you, it took my dad 12 years from when he moved to New Zealand to buy his first home in New Zealand. That's a long time. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I think it was the third time round, like it's a journey that you go on, and it's knowing that this is the journey and let's move forward, ignore the noise, let's get professional education or whatever, all of that, and just go for it. Because don't limit yourself.
Totally, yeah. And I think that it goes back to the point of getting around successful people is, in this conversation, getting around people who have done it, gone there and done it, and especially people who've done it multiple times, that you're talking to, Uncle John, who's got the portfolio, and you're always, I had a friend, my mum's good friend growing up, we always used to think that maybe she was in hard times, because every time we went to her house, it was a different house. We're like, oh, mum is like, I won't say their name, but is she going through tough times because she keeps moving house? And I was like, oh no, she actually just buys and flips property. And as an 8-9-year-old, I had no idea what that even really meant. I was like, that sounds like the same thing. Now that I am older and I see that same person now, very successful real estate agent and property entrepreneur, and what I thought was them shifting around because they had to was them actually like hustling, getting out there, making it happen. And so for me, I look to people like that and go, cool, there is a way. And there, if you've got the will, you can make it happen. So right now, we're going to end this podcast with some tips and some next steps for people just to get started. First one, if you're listening to this, I would say just turn this podcast off and just go and get started. Like, talk to a mortgage advisor today. Just pick up that phone and do what you need to do, or walk in store if you have to and you can, and just get conversations happening. I think that's a really good piece of advice to start now. If you want to keep listening and you need more encouragement, my last topic is for self-employed people, we've got Henry, a automated tax software. For business owners, we've got Xero, and these are two amazing Kiwi startups, but not limiting it to Kiwi startups. For home buyers or developers or people who are just involved in property, are there any software is there any software that can help people? Is it just Google Sheets in a can-do attitude, or are there any things out there you've seen that have actually helped people either get their finances in line or build better habits?
I think it's quite an interesting area in that everyone's situation is different, and the tech that supports them in their hiccups or the things that actually they need help with, it kind of differs. But for us, it's like when we're talking, you're asking about sort of what sources and technology, start to familiarize yourself with the bank's websites. They've got, information on the types of products, how does a mortgage work? What kind of products? What is a revolving credit facility? Everyone's talking about them. How does it work? Getting familiar around that, building that knowledge bank. Then also you do have, repayment calculators. Use them with a grain of salt because, like I said, what actually goes in behind the scenes of what you can afford is very complicated. But, get an idea of if my interest rate was 6%, what's the repayment like on a $800,000 mortgage? Start, because you might be surprised. Often people are.
And surprised or shocked.
Surprised. Like, oh, okay. Not going to be going on holiday very soon. But it's just being aware and using the information that is online to sort of, again, build your knowledge bank. I think, using, if you are self-employed, using, that good relationship with your accountant, the tech to be on top of your accounts, really important. Also, you've got savings trackers on, I think, some of the bank's apps. Don't quote me. I have seen them pop up where it's like your savings goals. Use them. Also, make sure you actually do have a budget in place. I use Excel, which is very old-fashioned. But for me, it works. I know exactly what my income is coming in this month. I know all of my expenses, what my insurance is, etc. And for me, that helps me make a well-informed decision on where my money is going this month and achieving those savings goals. So finding something that works for you is really important.
That's what I was going to say. End of the day, find what works for you. You might have a friend who's the next Steve Jobs and they've got 20 apps that are helping them, get a loan. Or you might be just the type of person that's going to be masked on the back of a napkin, and just anything, whatever works for you to get on track, to get started and be informed and equipped is what we would probably encourage people to do.
And also that's my own bias is I still use Excel. So for me, that's the budgeting tool that's worked. So I actually don't necessarily have a well-versed of knowledge of the different apps that are coming up. So I think my friends do use a couple and they really like them. And they can see how much this month has gone to food and how much has gone to fuel, etc. So explore them, but also while getting that financial advice to make sure that your
actually going
goals are in line with actually what you're trying to achieve as well. So it's a bit of balance.
Awesome. Well, it's been an epic episode. I think it's been full of a lot of value. The key takeaways for me, really, like we've said it multiple times, is get in touch with an advisor. Get in touch with yourself in terms of your goals, what are you actually wanting to achieve? Because the first question Keagan and the leading team are going to ask you is, what do you actually want to do? If you don't have the answers, then it's hard for them to support you. So try to really think about what you want, talk to the right people, get a team around you, and then just make a plan and stick at it, because the goal of this podcast is to create more homeowners or to support developers in what they're presenting to the market. So check out the lending team pretty much anywhere online. See you guys everywhere, which is awesome. And if you're listening to this, stick around for the next episode, which is going to be jam-packed of value as well. Hope this has been good. The lending team, all online. Thanks, Keagan. It's been awesome.
Thank you very much.